Awesome. We are live. Welcome, Miss Sherry and Laura, our lovely guests for tonight. How are you, ladies?
Doing great. Thank you.
Doing
Awesome.
great. Sitting here in my travel trailer, and we're on the road. We are sitting here in Melbourne, Florida. Yeah, so kind of
Awesome.
exciting. Yeah.
That is exciting.
And I'm sitting directly on the other side of the state from her in my fake background here. Isn't it beautiful?
I love it.
And we're just waiting for the hurricane to hit.
Oh, I know. Sherry was telling me about that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a bad one, but the people that are right on the ocean, I just feel for them.
Oh, yeah.
So you said you're across the state. Where are you located at?
I'm right in between Sarasota and Tampa. It's a
Mm,
rural area called Parrish. Nice little small community and just
awesome.
just beautiful people here. Very happy people.
Awesome. So, if you don't mind, for those that are watching, to share, I know I've seen, you shared your story with me, but why don't you share a little bit of your story and your background with those that are watching?
Absolutely. And my story is long, so just interrupt me
That's all
anytime.
right.
I don't want to overtalk. So I have been in the health and fitness industry for, oh gosh, what would it be now? Over 40 years, 42 years. I'll be 63 next month. And the way and the reason I got into it is because as a not even a young adult, but as a teenager, everything just kind of went askew. I had a great childhood, fantastic parents, healthy eating. I mean, really a great life. But somewhere around, I think it was around the age of 13, and I don't know if it was really hormones that kicked in or what, but I woke up one day, I looked in the mirror, and an ugly person was looking back at me, and my whole mood, my whole beautiful life just absolutely fell apart. And I've just done a lot of deep diving into myself to figure out how did that happen? Why did that happen? And I really figured out a lot of it was chemistry, but it just led me down a really dark path. And I started uh, moving over towards food, primarily sugar. And I used to babysit when I was 13 for the neighbor. And I remember I'd go in their fridge and I would take like this little tiny slice of everything that was in the fridge so that they wouldn't notice, and everything that was in the cupboards. And I would just basically binge for hours on end until they came home. And I did that for, gosh, many years. And then that turned into a really obsessive eating disorder. And I was eating like a whole batch of Toll House cookies, a whole gallon of ice cream, all in one sitting. And that would give me like a food hangover for 2 or 3 days. And then I would think, oh, I got to get control of this. I'd go on a diet. I would sign up for stuff, anything that come my way, the magic pill. And I just, for maybe 10 years, I just tried everything. And it turned into a really big emotional problem for me. I did go to an out treatment center for that. Um, I had this bright idea, so I couldn't manage my food, right? I was just like shoveling it in and eating everything I could. So I thought, well, if I can't manage food, then I have this great solution, and that's to eat nothing, because
Mm.
food's my problem, right? Right? I thought food was my problem. So I just stopped eating. And then I started going into the anorexia, but I was a very, very poor anorexic. I could not stick to it. I could, you know, I so I would go days without eating, and then I would binge for 3 days, and then I'd go days without eating, and I just absolutely lost control. So I just absolutely didn't know what to do. I went to see a hypnotherapist, and I know that was where things started turning around, because I figured out something's going on up here. I don't know what it is. I now know that a lot of it was chemistry and the sugar and the insulin, and just, I was basically a drug addict, but with food. But this hypnotherapist really helped me work through that all or nothing scenario that I was living off of, and said, why don't you just eat a sandwich? Why don't you just have lunch? And I'm like, I don't even know what lunch is. A meal to me is where
A
I eat for
whole.
3 hours. It's not just a meal and then you stop. I had absolutely no concept of how a normal person would eat. And she really helped me in that. I mean, to the degree that I decided to go to hypnotherapy school and I got certified as a hypnotherapist because I thought, this is fantastic. So I got a hold of the whole mental challenge. And then, so I got to the point where I was eating normally, but I had gained like 35 pounds, 40 pounds. And I thought, I need to do something physically now. So I started working out, got into the gym, started working on some diet plans. And I use the word diet because that's what we used back then, right? In the
Yeah.
70s
Yeah.
and 80s, we used the word diet. We don't use that word anymore. But I started getting an understanding of what the components of food were because, we're not taught that as a kid. We don't know what proteins and fats and carbs are. I went to Weight Watchers. That was helpful for me because I learned about food. My favorite one was Richard Simmons' Deal a Meal. I think I'm showing my age now. I love that thing. Do you remember that? It was like this fold over thing, and there was cards for proteins and cards for fats and cards for carbs. And each day, you had a certain allotment, and you moved it from one side to the other. And when they were all from the left side to the right side, you were done eating. And if you moved them all over by noon, you were in big trouble, right? So, that was helpful. But I still couldn't really gain control over that. Continued to go on all of the diets. And then I really figured out a lot of what you teach here is that what happens inside of our body, how our body works, we have chemical signaling that goes back and forth. Our hormones, if they're unbalanced, we get cravings. If our gut microbiome is not balanced, then that produces cravings in our brain and just all of this stuff. And I just thought that was so fantastic. So I did end up going to school for that and graduated as a functional diagnostic nutritionist.
That's awesome.
And I just felt like, nobody's helping me. I went to so many specialists. I spent tens of thousands. Gosh, I hope my husband can't hear me. I spent a lot of money trying to get this thing fixed. And, everybody I talked to, everybody I worked with, they all had a piece of the puzzle. They all were just fantastic. But my whole puzzle wasn't coming together. I still had these missing pieces. So I thought, I need to take some responsibility and do this for myself and figure out what's going on. And like what you're doing here is you're educating people to, learn your body, learn your blood sugar levels, learn your cortisol rhythms, learn this stuff, take control, monitor your body, manage it, get your own feedback and see what's working and what's not. And, we're in charge of ourselves. We walk around in this body 24 hours a day. And a therapist doesn't, a coach doesn't. Coaches are fantastic. You guys are coaches. I'm a coach. But the people we coach have to say, hey, this is my body and I need to take this information, this education, and I need to make this practical working for me on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely end up and have to apply it, right? We can end up and teach and, go through, a lot of different scenarios or cases that we've seen, but everyone's body is different. And, when someone has like what you were talking about coming from an eating disorder background and the addiction mentality, we even have, a coach in BNC that was addicted, has been several years sober now from other things beyond just food. Did your food addictions ever lead to other addictions also? Because
that's a big part of the story.
Kind of what we see that some people will have.
Yeah, sorry, it froze up there for a minute. But yeah, that's a part of the story I left out. But it did definitely lead to first alcohol, lighter drugs, harder drugs. I think I tried pretty much every drug that was out there. All that did was put the body into a further tailspin. That didn't fix anything. So, addictions are addictions. And, when I got off drugs and alcohol, I went back to food. So it was back and forth. And at one point then I just said, no drugs, no alcohol, went completely sober, didn't touch a drink for maybe 9 years. Because, couldn't social drink because one drink and 10 were the same to me.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I listened to the live with your gal, your coach that's an addict. That was fantastic.
Sly is wonderful. She's a real great asset to the community, especially from that mindset aspect. Because when you are someone that has never, dealt with, many of us have an addiction. It just maybe isn't the same form of an addiction, right? So whether it's an addiction to food or other substances, it's hard to convey that to a non-addict of what they're going through.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of us have food addictions, but don't really recognize it. Um, when you're looking for that magic pill or that magic answer, because that's going to fix it, that's a sign of an addiction. It's that you're looking for something exterior that you can put in that's going to fix it, right? And marketers, they go off after that pain point. They go off of the suffering. And it's like, if I can catch somebody in their moment of suffering and I can offer them that magic, they're going to grab a hold of it and say, this is the one, this is the thing that's going to work. And it doesn't. None of those things work. I mean, supplements can play a role, but I mean, at one point I was a supplement addict too, because I was taking in handfuls of supplement thinking these will fix me, well, the picture's bigger than that. And it really comes down to the natural rhythm of the body, like your circadian rhythm that you teach about, the hormonal rhythms of the body, learning how to really learn. I used to hear people say, form a relationship with your body. And, I used to think, how the hell with you? Shut up. I don't even know what you're saying. I don't understand what that means. But really, we walk around in this body all day long and it does serve us. And when we fight against it and we're trying to manipulate it to do things, then we're at odds with our own body. And when you form that relationship with your body, you don't know you've done it until after you've done it. But what that means is that you're respecting and honoring the systems of the body and how they flow and how they function together. And then you work with those rhythms and you understand, what your gut biome is. I didn't even know what gut biome was until 6 or 7 years ago. It's like, I didn't know I had a bunch of little buggies in me. Well, it turns out that I am more them than I am me. We got trillions of biome bacteria in our gut, and they drive things. So rather than trying to work against them, let's work with them. Figure out what's going on. I really think lab screenings are important to figure out what's going on. You don't know if you have insulin problems until you check your insulin. With a finger prick or glucose monitor, the continuous one, those are fantastic tools. There's so many tools that we can use to find out. It's just like you take your car to a mechanic. They don't just listen to it and fix it. They run a full diagnostic on that vehicle.
Yeah. And
I think it's
the data nerd in me likes to end up and track a lot of stuff. So I get, the gadgets, the testing. Did you do yours through like a physician, or did you have to be your own advocate and go out and find a way to do your own testing? Because that's one of the big things for a lot of our followers is they get pushback from their physicians.
Absolutely. I mean, the medical model is not really to create health. It's to diagnose and prescribe. So, and the diagnostic testing that physicians have at their fingertips, those are controlled by insurance companies. So say, for instance, you think, I've got fatigue, my hair's falling out. I just feel just terrible all of the time. And you want to run a thyroid test, they're going to run one panel. And it's not even a panel that's going to tell you what's happening in your thyroid. It's your TSH, it's that's is it the pineal gland, right? Telling your thyroid, that it needs to make thyroid. It's not telling you what happens. Is it making thyroid? How much thyroid is it making? Is it uptaking in your body? Is it being resisted by your body? So in the medical community, you're not going to get that. So I did go to 2 hormone specialists actually to get all those labs run. I spent 2 years with them. Finally figured all that out. It's like, okay, I have hypothyroidism, right? Yeah, pushback from the medical community, it's going to be there forever. It's just, if they can't get insurance companies pay for their labs, they're not going to run them. So I really think functional lab screenings are the only way to find out the deep dive of what's going on inside.
And you talked about, really getting to know your body. Now, you've had, several years in the bodybuilding figure competition space. And how has that changed since you've gotten older, since you've been in menopause? How has that in tune with your body? Or how have you had to adjust since you've progressed through that?
Oh, that's a great question. So I did my first competition when I was 40, and it was just kind of a whim. I had gotten control over the eating. I was feeling fit. I was healthy. I didn't have fatigue. And I thought, I just need to get back in the gym. So I was in the gym, and my ex-husband at the time brought home this little flyer that said, there's this bodybuilding competition. And I said, are you crazy? I can't do that. And he goes, well, why don't you just go check it out? So I trained really hard. I coached myself. We didn't even have, I don't think we had YouTube back then. I mean, I just bought some books and bought some VHSs and learned how do you eat? How do you lose fat to that level? And so I competed for a couple of years. I had a blast. I won the competition, which just absolutely fired me up. Now, granted, it was a small competition, but I just wanted to see what the body could do. So I did that for 20 years off and on, competed when I was 54, 57, 60. I think my last one when I was 60. And it was a really good way to learn the real key to fat loss. How do you get rid of the fat itself? Okay. I did most of that the wrong way. So I froze. I don't know if you can hear me, but I did a lot of that the wrong way. And much of it was a little bit too much starvation and not enough muscle building. I believe it harmed my thyroid. There are good ways that you can do that where you can keep your body in balance. So what I learned through that process, again, I kind of went back to that all or nothing thinking. And over time, I did learn how to do that in a more healthy fashion. My last coach that I had actually was a functional nutritionist, and she taught me a lot about the gut biome and worked on my hormones. We ran hormone panels together. And she helped me understand how you can get to that level without starving yourself. So I learned a whole lot through that process, probably 4,000 hours of YouTube over the last 6 years. Lots of nerdy information out there.
Which is kind of where a lot of people still end up and go, Dr. Google and Captain Research. They constantly end up and try to put that in there.
Yeah, and it all plays a role. I listen to all of it, but I don't accept all of it, if that makes sense. I learn from it and then bring it in and kind of sift through it and see what makes sense to me. What are they selling the magic pill, and what's the real stuff? And so the videos I listen to are usually an hour to 2 hours long because it's the real sciencey kind of stuff, not just 20 minutes of do this, do that.
So throughout this decoding of, the art of fat loss, what has your nutrition plan or diet kind of look like throughout these years of progressing? Because you said you did it in your 40s, your 50s, 60s, which to me is amazing because you don't end up and even look like you're 60. So hopefully you're still there. There we go. Okay. I'm like, we lost you there for a minute, but we could still hear you. So yeah, you look amazing. So how did it kind of transition? or how have you adjusted it to really decode this fat loss aspect?
Well, after that competition when I was 60, I heard about keto, and I'd heard about it before. Actually, my husband um, was doing keto, and I was telling him all the reasons that was a bad thing to do and why you are going to die if you don't eat carbs. And he's like, this works for me. He lost weight, he's looking good, he's feeling good. And I'm like, oh, maybe there's something to this I don't understand. So I did my research on keto, found Keto Group, which is where I met you two ladies. I've been in there for 3 years, and I have learned so much about not fearing fat. Eating fat doesn't mean it's going to transition to storing fat. In fact, it's the higher insulin foods that end up helping you to store fat. So I did a very strict keto, again, a little bit of that all or nothing thinking. So I thought, if I'm going to do keto, I'm going to do keto. So I did keto straight for about 9 months. I felt terrific. I mean, my brain felt on fire. I had a lot of energy. I was able to do my workouts in the gym. Lost some weight because I had gained a little bit after the competition, which is always normal. And I just felt really good. And then it's about 8-9 months in, I started declining a little bit and feeling not very well. So I talked to our coach, and he said, Laura, you need to eat some carbs. And I just freaked out. I said, you're a keto coach. Why, what are you doing telling me to eat some carbs? And he said, well, every now and again, especially for women, you need that little boost of carbs. And I'm not cycling, I'm postmenopausal, but I did eat some carbs. I was afraid of them. Ate some carbs and felt good again. I thought, oh, this is really interesting. So I started experimenting with going back and forth from doing low carb to having carbs in. So carb cycling, basically. So generally, I'm 4 to 5 days a week with 20 grams of carbs or less. And then those other days, I will have carbs, but I keep them manageable. I don't overeat. I never eat a meal that's all carbohydrates because I've learned how much that spikes your insulin and the fat storage. So I always have a balanced meal when I'm having them and have the lower glycemic carbs. In fact, I was just listening to one of your lives. You were talking about berries in season. So like berries and maybe some sweet potato, a little bit of dairy that has some carbs in it. But I don't eat bread. I don't eat gluten anymore, and don't even miss it. If I'm at a birthday party, somebody's serving cake, it's like it's there, looks interesting, tastes damn good, but there's no drive to grab it. And that's like when I say forming the relationship with your body. Once you have that, and you know that's going to damage, and you know what it's going to damage, you have to become educated. What will that piece of cake do once it's in my belly? What are all the other systems it affects? Then you just don't really want that anymore. So I've changed a lot of my eating patterns.
And that has to do a lot with, like you said, the mindset and working on that, foundational aspect of the addiction.
Right.
Because many people have that addiction to it and they don't recognize it as an addiction because, the occasional piece of cake, which I'm not dogmatic. If I end up being able, I can have, a small piece of the cake. But like you said, for some people that has major consequences, or they end up and have, a major reaction to it. But yeah, also not making it a routine aspect. And that's where a lot of people nowadays, especially, every gathering, every, Sunday at church, every, whatever, it's all about food. It's not about socializing. It's not about getting together. It's about, bringing all these different dishes of, pastas and cakes and cookies and, etc., instead of just learning how to be around and be grateful for the community that you hold. And like I said, again, that's kind of looking at, the mindset aspect and the fact that it's really not food, right? It's not nourishing us. It's not providing any form of nourishment to our body. And that's where ultimately we have to start, is getting that foundation of nourishment in the body and what it means to our bodies.
And once you get your body balanced and you do, the grounding, you get your circadian rhythm right, you get your hormones balanced. Once you and get your gut, I'm really big into the gut microbiome because I think that's just such a huge driver. Once you get all that in balance, then you have the freedom to pick and choose. So if the cake is there, you don't have the drive like I have to have it. It's like I think I'm going to have a piece of cake, and then there's no emotion tied to it, and then there's no guilt, and your body can take that hit when you're balanced. So yeah, I mean, I'm not perfect by all means. I have my treats here and there, or I'll grab some of my husband's french fries, but the body can take the hit when you've achieved that balance. Because I see food as fuel. I mean, it's, to me, it's not a social thing. I mean, love the social gatherings, but I always bring a dish that I know that I like to eat and share it with everybody else, so I know there's something there I can have. I shouldn't say can, that I want to have.
Yeah.
But it's the quality of fuel. So I'll tell you a quick story. This is a little aside from fat loss, but I was working with a business coach about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and he was trying to spur me on to be more successful. And he said, "What's a goal you have? What do you really, really want? Like a material item?" And I said, "I want a hot rod." And he says, "Hot rod?" And I said, "Yeah, I've always wanted like a race car." And he goes, "Well, then go buy one." I'm like, "Are you kidding?" So thought about it, got online, and by all means, guess what I did? I went out and bought a race car. I had it shipped to my mechanic. He went through it and said, "This is a piece of crap. We need to we need to completely overhaul it." So I overhauled it, did all this work to it, learned how to drive it. And through that process, I realized I don't know anything about cars. To me, you get in, you turn the key, and then magic happens and it just runs. I don't know how to maintain a car. I don't know all these words mechanics say to me. I don't know what any of that means. So I thought, well, if I'm going to drive this car, I need to understand how this vehicle works. So I went to auto mechanics school at night for 3 years. And I'm actually like 3 classes from getting my degree, but I kind of switched over to nutrition. But here's what I learned is that car that you drive, that is a very complicated mechanism, and all the pieces have to be working together and all the signaling has to happen. If you put the wrong fuel in it, you're going to seize your engine. I mean, there is just so much going on in there. Same thing in our bodies. We've got all these systems that have to be in balance and communicate to one another. And when we put the wrong fuel in it, it just sputters. It just doesn't run right. So that's a way to emotionally get out of the food connection. And it's not the taste and the yummy feeling.
No,
It's
it's a pleasure.
how is that going to make my vehicle run? And after a while, when you put the wrong fuel in it long enough, you just get tired of feeling that way. You just feel tired of sputtering. And that's how I view food. And it just makes it easier to make choices.
Yeah, and the fact of, it's not that you can't have it, it's a choice, and we're constantly making these choices. But it is also beyond just the food aspect. When we are constantly being, like if you had that vehicle and it was, being blasted with salt water all the time, it's going to end up and start to rust and, have issues. Same thing with our body. And that's where our community ends up and focuses beyond just the nutrition, because you can have the diet, completely on point, but be in a bad environment. But yet you can have, a bad environment and the perfect diet and a bad environment, or a perfect
Right.
environment and a bad diet. And they both have to work together, because like you said, all of these pieces of the puzzle have to fall into place, and they all end up and work together. It's like otherwise you're a hamster in a wheel and just chasing yourself.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. As a matter of fact, during the bodybuilding, when I said I made a lot of mistakes, some of the best photographs I have from that stage were when I was at my worst health. So you can't look at a specific diet or a specific figure or a photoshopped, something on Instagram and say, that's my goal. That's what I want. For me, it was like a challenge, but I learned there's a wrong way to do it. And taking care of that vehicle, like you said, if you get all the salt on your vehicle, you're going to go home and you're going to wash it, you're going to buff it. That's taking care, emotionally taking care of your vehicle. And the same thing, our self care, just getting out and our bare feet grounding or taking a walk without earphones in, and just having some peace. And, that's nourishment as well.
So, Laura, since we've known you for a while, you kind of also tackled the toxin part of, I remember you kind of going through that. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah. I don't know which part you remember, but I learned about the mouth. Is that what you're talking about?
Mhm.
Yeah. So in the keto program, there was a lot of education on cellular health and how toxins and chemicals affect our cellular health. And I had no idea that metal fillings in the mouth with the mercury were toxic to the body. And when the body's toxic, it just can't run properly and you feel bad. Root canals, I didn't know that those were, I just went to the dentist. The dentist was the professional, just like the doctor's the professional. And they did their thing. So I did a whole mouth overhaul and I had 4 root canals removed. I had implants done. I had crowns removed. I had all the metal removed. And then I went through a detox program. And I cannot tell you how much that helped me. It lifted a whole lot of brain fog. My body felt more slender. I got rid of a lot of inflammation. So I think, detoxing chemicals, we never really think about our chemical exposure and how that affects us, but just, putting on lotions and face creams and using, detergent that is very toxic or household cleaning products or Febreze. I mean, I was just
Yep.
chemical overload. So, I did the whole mouth overhaul and that wasn't cheap. I had to take out a 401k loan, which I have paid back, thank goodness. But I thought, that's an investment in health. It's kind of like, invest now or pay the doctor later. Because eventually, I think the toxins, damage our cells so much that we start getting disease. And, as that progresses, we feel worse. Our body just doesn't function. So, I've gone through a lot of detox and I've really cycled out. I mean, I would say I'm probably like 80% non-toxic. I still haven't, the hair stuff. I've still haven't done the natural hair stuff yet, but I am getting rid of the color. I'm going silver, which I'm very excited about. This top part, that's all me. But when it comes to like face lotions and creams and dishwasher soap and hand soap, everything I just cycled into non-toxic products, and I noticed a difference with that. I mean, every little bit helps. It's nothing's completely dramatic, but it all adds up over time.
Which we also do the aromatherapy meeting, and that was one of the topics on Thursday night, which was the ditch and switch. Was like you said, ditching the Febreze. I used doTERRA, so I've got the little bubble diffuser, and I
Right.
actually just did a live before I jumped on this evening for my LRP, which is the loyalty reward program, and being able to, like you said, slowly switch that out. I mean, I've got my dishwasher soap sitting down here, my laundry soap that I end up and I use, several of these non-toxic chemicals that I use from doTERRA to switch out, those that will make you cough and gag and eyes water, when you're cleaning the bathroom or whatever. But I think it's really important to touch, a little bit more on the fact of, you had made the comment about your breast implants and that you got them removed. I
Um,
just had a coaching client that had reached out to me and was like, "Well, do I really need to end up and get them removed, or are they okay?" What
well,
would you end up and say from a person that has had them?
I have a lot of comments on that. Let's see. When we as females feel like we need to have breast implants, I had mine for 22 years, and I have always been flat as a board. And quite frankly, I kind of like that. I'm kind of a tom girl, really. But I moved to Arizona and around the Scottsdale area, and there was not one woman that walked by that was flat chested. Everybody had these big boobs, and I went to work one day, and I had this cute little sundress on, and it had a little gathering. And I went to the bathroom, and the gathering was up above my breasts because there was nothing to hold the elastic down, right? So I thought, well, yeah, everybody else is doing it. I'm going to go get these things. Well, see, they don't tell you. I knew that the silicone was bad. I knew silicone is damaging to the body. So I said, I don't want that. I want saline. So the doctor said, absolutely safe. You can have these in forever. Well, what they don't tell you is that those saline breast implants are encased in a silicone shell, right? They're all silicone, doesn't matter what's inside. And actually, they brought silicone back on the market a couple of years ago, and now they're having major problems with it. I didn't have any problems with them. I never had any ruptures or leaks or anything. But I did start noticing a couple of years ago, I was getting some brain fog. And like I would log into my computer, and I didn't know my password that I use every single day. My thyroid was getting worse. I was just really getting destroyed. My hair started falling out. And so I started researching, I wonder what else is going on. So I went on a website, Breast Implant Illness by Nicole. It's a very large website. And I started deep diving into that and learned what all of the chemical reactions, it just soaks into our body and it damages our cells. And I listed out all of the symptoms that I was having. There was like 38 of them that matched the lists that I found online. And I thought, well, I think this is a problem. So I went to see a breast specialist. She examined me and went through my medical history, and she goes, you have to have these out absolutely right now. This silicone, everything you've described is the silicone is degrading, and it is just melting into your system. And you now have silicone throughout all your cells because it does degrade. So I did have them removed in May. It was a fairly extensive procedure because what happens is the body encases a capsule of scar tissue around it. So they have to take that entire capsule. If they only take the implant, the silicone's still in the capsule. So I am now flat as a board, and I love it. But I can tell you that the day after that surgery, all of my brain fog was gone, 100% gone, like overnight. I had my fatigue went away. I still have a little bit left, but not much. I used to be able to do an hour and a half in the gym and just love it. I could barely squeak out 20 minutes 3 times a week. And once I could start lifting weights again, now I can do an hour long workout with no problem. So that's getting better. My thyroid seems to be getting better. My hair is not falling out as much. And the symptoms just go on and on. And as you know, thyroid affects your ability to burn fat. So it's like, well, there we go. Just another piece of the puzzle. And then I'm going to go through another detox program in January because that stuff's still floating around. It doesn't go away by itself.
Yeah, you got to really get in there and pull it out of the cell and truly bind it. And I mean, you hear a lot of, cleansing and detox and stuff, but doing, a proper one to get it fully out of the cell and down to, the brain and the body and et cetera. It's just, yeah, it is. It's a lot. And people don't make that connection again. They're not in tune, or, their intuitive side isn't there enough to make that connection of what they're putting in their body, whether it's, implanting or through what we're eating. You kind of said that your husband was doing keto, kind of shifting gears here. Is he doing keto? What does the household kind of look like as far as, family, friends?
Oh, that's a great question. How am I going to answer that? We got married in our early 50s, and the agreement, because I was being pretty rigid for competing, our agreement was I won't give you shit about you what you eat if you don't give me any shit about what I eat, because I was pretty restrictive at the time, and he was more cheeseburgers and hamburger and French fries. But over time, we've kind of met in the middle. So he started doing keto because he wanted to lose some weight. And he does that, he keto flexes. So he does that like 5 days a week and then has carbs on the weekends when we're out and about. But we eat completely differently. He just does keto differently than I do. I'm a little bit more sensitive to additives in foods and anything that has a list of ingredients. If the ingredient isn't one item, like beef,
Whole food.
whole food. I eat whole food, and he does more of the packaged foods, but he still does keto. It's just a little bit more of a dirty keto, but it still works for him, you know. And he feels good, and his energy level is higher. I just notice a big difference when he does keto. Friends and family, they are just used to me. When we go out to eat, I order what I I never give anybody crap about what they eat. You know, everybody has choices, and there's absolutely no judgment. Um, and I just think that we all make our own decisions and eat what we want to eat. And if somebody wants to learn, then they'll ask me. If they don't, that's fine. So our family gatherings, we have no food issues at all.
Yeah, I had that yesterday. We went out with our son and daughter-in-law, and we went to a steak place, and I ordered steak cooked in butter with a side of butter. And um, we got our food, and it was the questions started. It was like, "Well, so why don't you eat vegetables?" And and it just kind of went from there. And it's oh, I could never do that, and oh, I don't like meat, and it was all the things you hear. And again, I agree with you. No judgment in that. But if you have questions, I can answer them. So I answered them lightly and delicately. But I know they found me sitting there eating steak and butter.
Well, I used to be one of those that thought,
Yeah,
putting butter on steak, what the heck are you doing? And now I love that.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
It's funny because you really have to explain it to the wait staff. Like you really, I have learned to be very meticulous. Like, is this real butter? I don't want margarine. I mean, like there's no oil on this, no vegetable oils, and I mean, to watching their faces, it was kind of funny. But they, my stepson, looked at me and said, "Oh my goodness, you look amazing." So that things are kind of turning in their head.
right.
And a lot of times they'll come back and ask you questions. And I'm sure you've had a lot of that.
Well, and that's I think the way I learned was at my own speed. And when I was interested in something, then I reached out to figure out what else do I need to learn. And people around me are the same way. Is that I never pressure anybody or even really talk about it unless they ask me, and then it's at their own speed. You don't just you know like Becky, you and I are like nerd sisters. I am so nerdy, and my husband and I joke about this all the time because, we were out the other day, and I said, "Are you ready for lunch?" And he goes, "No, I think I want to have a little more autophagy." I thought, "You've been listening to me." And he goes, "Yeah, I heard that word. I heard what you said, so I had to go look it up." Um, and that's the thing, is that when people hear you speaking or hear what you're doing, and they reach out, we I reach up to mentors, and they always help me. I don't, I'm just a normal person. We're all normal people. We're not any better than anybody else, and there's a lot of people that are more advanced than we are. And, I reach out to them, and then I reach out to others to help. And, just everybody at their own pace is how I feel.
Absolutely. It's all an amazing network. And like you said, we are real people. That's one of the things, in our title is, hey, we're just real people having a discussion, right? We're not trying to be some expert or guru or, anyone like that. But if someone was to end up and reach out to you of, hey, you've had this amazing success, where would be the first point that you would end up and turn them to as far as getting started on it?
Well, I always do a consultation call to figure out, what their needs are, what their goals are. My website, I'm having some problems with the website. I'll have my coaching packages on there. So I'm going to have 3 different levels of coaching packages. The one-on-one coaching includes all the diagnostic screenings, and that's like the full 6-month program. But I also do just diet and lifestyle management along with the emotional. And that's about a 4-month program. I mean, I build the customized program per the individual needs, because everybody's different. There's not one thing that works for each person. And that's how I will always, just key into what their needs are. So my website is decodingfatloss.com. But it's not up yet. I'm hoping in a couple of months. I've got some changes. The Elementor just shifted to a whole new program, so I have to move it into a different program. And then I'm on Facebook at Laura Painter FDNP, and on Instagram, although I don't work Instagram very well. Full disclosure, I'm not a techie. I'm a nerd, but not a techie.
Social media is great when it wants to work with us, right?
Right.
Well, anything that you would like to touch upon that we haven't touched on for the great followers here?
Well, I think we've touched on a lot of really good stuff. I would just say that there's no perfection, there's a journey. And when you stop seeking perfection, it calms the mind, and then you just take steps. If each day you do something new or better than you did the prior day, that's success. And you just keep doing that day after day after day. And then you look back 2 years later and you're like, wow, look at what I learned and look what I did. And just take the pressure off to be perfect and have everything happen right now, because it does work. Everything works when you apply it and you execute the plan. So like what you said at the beginning, Becky, it's if you don't act upon it, it's useless. So each day you act upon something and try to simplify it.
Exactly. Those small steps make the big success.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I know personally, Laura, watching your journey for almost 2 years has been amazing to see. I remember questions when I first joined that platform, and reading your questions and how it was. I remember thinking in the very beginning, like, yeah, I have that question too. I didn't think of that. Like, oh, and so even your questions I learned, and eventually I reached out to you and we chatted here and there. But it's been such a great thing to watch your journey. And you've done amazing work on yourself, but you are a completely different person than even almost 2 years ago.
Every day, I think we all are every day when we're on this journey. And I have learned so much from you on your insulin. I've learned more, I think, about insulin from you in the group than anybody else. It's just been amazing. And Becky, I got to tell you, I'm still working on the circadian rhythm thing. That 10 minutes in the morning, I love to be in my pajamas with my coffee and not walking outside, but I am going to do it. I am going to do it.
Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. That's all I can say. I, again, talked to a coaching client earlier, and, she's like, I'm a busy person. And I said, baby steps. We don't have to, expect things Amazon fast. We just have to build these baby steps and make it a continuous habit, because these consistent baby steps are what create that habit, which create it into a ritual. So,
and once they become a habit, they're like non-negotiables.
Yep.
Like I don't watch TV ever at night. without those puppies on. Because I have noticed if I don't wear my blue light blockers at night, I don't sleep well. It's on my ring. It's a stat. I see it, I mean, I've learned so much from you on the sleep hygiene, and but it took baby steps, but now it's non-negotiables.
I was just saying, normally I'm sitting in red light, which is what I was messing with. So normally I'm sitting in the red light by this time of the night, but most people can't see me in just the red light. So I do have a little lamp here with incandescent bulbs because they're a lot safer than, LEDs, but that'll be a whole other topic in the circadian. But yes, I'm a nerd in that space. I love teaching the intuitive steps in the community, the aromatherapy. I mean, we have all sorts of these areas beyond just the nutrition because it does all play a role.
It does, absolutely. It's all connected.
So awesome. Well, it was
Well, thank you for
lovely.
being, yeah, I was going to say, thank you for being a good sport when I reached out to you and said, hey,
You're
would you
welcome.
like to come on? And
Absolutely. I love your channel. I've been listening to it, and I'm going to try some of the recipes too. They look fantastic.
I was to say they're definitely high fat. That's where, I spent 2.5 years as a carnivore was the higher fat side of things. So a lot of the videos before we, started this as the Healing the Whole Body podcast, it was all my high fat recipes and those type of things. So they are all there. And it's what works for me is the higher fat side.
All right. Love it. Well,
That's
thank you so
awesome.
much. Very much appreciate it, especially seeing your lovely faces.
Well, it was wonderful seeing you, and I'm glad that you were able to jump on and share your success story. It's such an inspiration to many people.
All
it
right.
might be fun in a couple months to circle back and see how you're doing and just get an update if you're game.
Good idea. I love it. Let's do it.
Especially after your detox.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to start that till I'm doing a gut protocol now, because after the antibiotics and so forth, I need to rebuild, and then I'll do the detox in January. But yeah, I will definitely keep you updated.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Sounds wonderful. And everyone, make sure you go and follow Laura on Facebook. Obviously, she doesn't do much on Instagram, and we'll be excited to wait for your website here in a couple months.
All right, I will let you know when it's up.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone. Have a
Thanks. Have
wonderful
a good
night.
night.